Have you ever felt exhausted without understanding why, or noticed that your skin suddenly appears yellowish? Do you think only alcohol harms your liver? The truth is, there are many other factors you may not realize that could be silently damaging your liver without you even knowing. And you're not alone. According to research, 1 in 4 adults in the US is facing liver disease without even realizing it. In today's video, we'll uncover some surprising signs that you may be overlooking, warning signals that your liver might be in trouble. But don't worry, stay tuned, because I'll also be sharing some incredibly simple yet effective natural ways to protect your liver at home and prevent further damage. Especially sign number 7 might catch you off guard, as it shows up in the most unexpected place, your feet. Don't ignore this sign, as it could be an early warning to help you avoid serious consequences. If you find this video valuable, be sure to hit the subscribe button so you never miss out on any health tips in our upcoming videos. And don't forget to leave a comment below. Share this video with your loved ones to help everyone protect their health and live a healthier, happier life every day. Don't let your liver suffer any longer. Take action today. 1. Pale or light-colored stool. One of the first noticeable symptoms of liver problems is a change in stool color. Normally, stool is brown due to bile, a digestive fluid produced by the liver that helps break down fats in the body. Bile not only aids in fat digestion, but also helps with the absorption of fat-soluble vitamins and the regulation of waste in the body. However, when the liver is not functioning properly or is damaged, bile flow can slow down, leading to a change in stool color. The stool may become pale, yellow, or even clay-colored. This is a warning sign that the liver may be in trouble, such as in the case of fatty liver disease, where excessive fat accumulates in the liver and impairs its ability to process and release bile. When bile is not produced in sufficient amounts or is obstructed, the digestive system cannot function properly, and the stool's color becomes pale or abnormal. In addition to changes in color, the stool may also float, which happens when fats in the food are not properly digested. When the liver cannot process fat, it is not fully absorbed by the body and instead is expelled through the digestive system. Floating stool often indicates more than just a dietary issue and could be a sign of liver dysfunction. Number 2. Night blindness. Night blindness, or difficulty seeing in low-light conditions, can be an unexpected sign of liver trouble. The liver plays an essential role in processing and transporting vitamin A, which is crucial for maintaining good vision, particularly in dim or dark environments. Vitamin A is transported to the eyes via special proteins, and without proper liver function, the body cannot efficiently process and deliver this vitamin. When the liver is not functioning optimally, a deficiency in vitamin A can develop, making it harder to see in low-light situations. This can become especially noticeable when driving at night or trying to navigate in dark rooms. While people often attribute poor night vision to aging or eye problems, liver dysfunction may be a hidden culprit. If you find yourself struggling to see clearly at night or in dimly lit spaces, it's worth considering the possibility that your liver may need attention. This symptom can gradually worsen if left unaddressed, leading to further complications in vision and overall health. 3. Swollen legs or ankles. Swelling in the legs or ankles is another common sign that the liver may not be functioning properly. This condition, known as peripheral edema, occurs when fluid builds up in the tissues, causing noticeable swelling. The liver plays a critical role in maintaining fluid balance in the body by producing a protein called albumin. Albumin helps keep fluid in the blood vessels and prevents it from leaking into the surrounding tissues. However, when the liver is damaged or not working efficiently, it may not produce enough albumin, which leads to fluid leakage and swelling, particularly in the lower legs and ankles. This swelling is often more noticeable by the end of the day, as gravity causes the fluid to pool in the lower extremities. It can also be more pronounced in the right leg due to blood flow patterns. While swelling in the legs can occur for various reasons, if it persists or becomes increasingly noticeable, it may be a sign of liver dysfunction. If the swelling is accompanied by other symptoms, such as discomfort or pain, it is important to seek medical attention, as it may indicate liver damage or other related conditions. Number 4. White or yellow bumps around your eyes. One of the more subtle signs that your liver may be struggling is the appearance of small white or yellowish bumps around your eyelids. These bumps, known as xanthelasma, are actually cholesterol deposits that form when the liver is unable to properly process and remove cholesterol from the bloodstream. The liver is responsible for breaking down and eliminating excess cholesterol, but when its function is impaired, cholesterol can build up and appear in unusual places, such as around the eyes. Xanthelasma typically appears as flat, yellowish or whitish bumps near the eyelids, and while they are generally harmless, they serve as a visible indicator that your liver is not processing cholesterol as it should. These bumps may be more noticeable in individuals with underlying liver conditions, such as fatty liver disease, where the liver's capacity to metabolize fats is compromised. If you notice these bumps developing around your eyes, it could be a warning sign that your liver is struggling and needs attention. It is important to monitor these changes and consult a healthcare professional for further evaluation. Before we move on to the next sign, if you found this video helpful, be sure to share it with someone you care about and hit the subscribe button so you never miss out on our latest health tips. Number 5. Heaviness under your right rib cage. A common but often overlooked symptom of liver trouble is a sensation of heaviness or discomfort under the right side of the rib cage, especially after eating. This feeling can occur when bile becomes too thick due to liver dysfunction, leading to blockages in the bile ducts. Bile, a digestive fluid produced by the liver, plays a crucial role in breaking down fats during digestion. When bile flow is hindered or obstructed, it can create pressure in the abdomen, causing discomfort or a feeling of fullness beneath the rib cage. This pressure may even irritate the phrenic nerve, which can cause discomfort that radiates up to the right shoulder. People often mistake this sensation for indigestion or a simple stomach issue, but if it becomes a regular occurrence, it could indicate that the liver is not functioning properly. The discomfort tends to worsen after meals, especially if the liver is struggling to produce or release bile efficiently. If you frequently experience a heavy or tight feeling in this area, it is important to consider the possibility that your liver may be in trouble. 6. Cracked, dry heels. Persistent dry and cracked heels, especially when they don't improve despite regular care, can be a sign of liver problems. The liver is responsible for processing vitamin B3 niacin, which is essential for the body's repair and maintenance processes. When the liver is struggling or damaged, it may use up all available niacin to aid in its own recovery. As a result, your skin, especially on areas that experience pressure, like your heels, may become dry and prone to cracking. A recent study published in 2023 in the World Journal of Gastroenterology found that nearly 30% of individuals with liver disease experience dry, cracked skin, particularly around the heels, due to niacin deficiency. The study highlighted that this deficiency, coupled with impaired liver function, can slow the body's ability to repair skin damage effectively. This issue is often overlooked as a cosmetic concern, but it can indicate that your liver is in distress. Cracked heels that don't respond to typical moisturizing treatments could be a sign that your liver is redirecting essential nutrients like niacin away from skin repair in favor of self-healing. If you notice persistent, dry, cracked heels that don't improve, it's important to consider liver health as a potential cause, especially if accompanied by other symptoms. 7. Pale or clubbed fingernails. Changes in the appearance of your fingernails can offer important clues about your liver health. One of the more noticeable changes that may occur is when nails become pale or develop a bulbous shape, known as clubbing. In clubbing, the tips of your fingers swell, and the nails begin to curve downward, forming a rounder or more convex shape. This condition is often associated with cirrhosis or chronic liver disease, which can cause reduced oxygen levels in the blood. When the liver is damaged, it can impair blood circulation, leading to a decrease in oxygen supply to various parts of the body, including the fingertips. Over time, this lack of oxygen can cause the nails to become pale or to develop the characteristic clubbed shape. If you notice that your nails have changed in this way, it could be a serious indication of liver dysfunction. While this symptom may seem subtle at first, it is a strong sign that your liver is under significant stress and requires medical attention. 8. Dark urine. Dark urine, which may appear yellow, amber, or even brown, can be an early warning sign that your liver is not functioning properly. The liver plays a crucial role in processing bilirubin, a yellow pigment produced when red blood cells break down. Normally, the liver filters out excess bilirubin and it is excreted through the stool, giving it its characteristic brown color. However, if the liver is damaged or inflamed, it may not be able to effectively process bilirubin. As a result, bilirubin can build up in the bloodstream, leading to a darker color in the urine. Dark urine can be caused by a condition called cholestasis, where bile flow is impaired, or by liver diseases such as hepatitis, cirrhosis, or even liver cancer. If your urine suddenly changes color and becomes much darker than usual, it could be a sign of liver dysfunction and should not be ignored. It's important to consult a healthcare professional for further evaluation, especially if the change in urine color is accompanied by other symptoms, such as fatigue, abdominal pain, or jaundice. Number 9. Yellowing of the skin or eyes, jaundice. Jaundice is one of the most visible signs that the liver is struggling. It occurs when the liver cannot effectively filter out bilirubin, a yellow pigment produced when red blood cells are broken down. Normally, bilirubin is processed by the liver and excreted through the stool, giving it its characteristic brown color. However, when the liver is not functioning properly, bilirubin builds up in the bloodstream, causing the skin, the whites of the eyes, and even the gums to turn yellow. This yellowing of the skin and eyes is often the result of conditions like fatty liver disease, hepatitis, or cirrhosis, which prevent the liver from filtering and processing bilirubin as it should. As the liver becomes overwhelmed and unable to perform its necessary detoxification functions, jaundice can develop. If you or someone you know starts noticing a yellowish tint to the skin or eyes, it's a clear sign that liver function is impaired and immediate medical attention is necessary. Jaundice is a significant indication that your liver needs urgent care, and addressing the root cause early can help prevent further complications. 10. Spider veins on the skin. Spider veins, or spider angiomas, are small, web-like clusters of blood vessels that appear just under the skin. These veins, which often appear red, blue, or purple, are typically seen on the face, legs, or feet. They can develop when the liver is compromised and is unable to process estrogen effectively. This leads to an increase in estrogen levels in the body, which in turn puts pressure on the tiny blood vessels, causing them to expand and form the characteristic web-like appearance. Spider veins are a common sign in people with liver diseases such as cirrhosis or hepatitis. As the liver function becomes impaired, the body's hormone balance is disrupted, leading to these visible veins on the skin. Although spider veins are not harmful, they can be an important indicator of liver dysfunction. If you notice these veins appearing unexpectedly, especially if you have other symptoms like fatigue, abdominal discomfort, or jaundice, it's important to consult with a healthcare professional for further evaluation of your liver health. If you're noticing unexplained spider veins on your skin, especially if they appear alongside other symptoms from the list, it's essential not to ignore them. Now might be the right time to focus on your liver health. The good news is that with early intervention, your liver has the ability to heal itself. Liver damage typically progresses through 4 stages: fat buildup, inflammation, scarring, and eventually cirrhosis, which can become irreversible if caught too late. However, the liver is one of the few organs in the body capable of regeneration, as long as it receives proper care and support. Here are some natural, scientifically backed methods you can try at home to help your liver recover and function better. Supporting your liver health is crucial, especially as we age, and there are some simple, everyday habits that can have a significant impact. Let's explore a few ways to naturally support your liver, particularly for seniors. 1. Start your day with turmeric coffee. One of the easiest yet most powerful habits is starting your morning with organic coffee mixed with turmeric. Coffee is rich in polyphenols, which are antioxidants that can help protect your liver, while turmeric contains curcumin, known for its potent anti-inflammatory properties. The combination of these two can help reduce liver inflammation and prevent scarring. Just add half a teaspoon of turmeric to your morning coffee to support liver detoxification and healing. Number 2. Stay hydrated. Drinking enough water is essential for liver function. Aim to drink at least 1 liter of water daily to help your liver produce bile, which is important for fat digestion and toxin elimination. Staying hydrated also helps reduce the thickness of your blood, easing the workload on your liver. Proper hydration can make a big difference in how well your liver can carry out its crucial functions. 3. Incorporate liver-friendly herbs. Herbs like ginger, turmeric, green tea, and milk thistle are incredibly beneficial for the liver. They work together to purify the blood, reduce inflammation, and enhance the liver's detoxification abilities. You can easily incorporate these herbs into your daily routine by adding them to teas or smoothies, providing natural support for liver health. Number 4. Opt for healthier fats. Avoid industrial vegetable oils such as corn, soybean, and canola oils, which promote inflammation and put strain on your liver. Instead, choose healthier fats like extra virgin olive oil, coconut oil, and grass-fed butter. These fats are easier for the liver to process and are much safer, contributing not only to liver health, but also adding delicious flavors to your meals. For 5, eat more sulfur-rich foods. Certain vegetables, such as kale, Brussels sprouts, broccoli, garlic, and onions, are rich in sulfur, which helps increase the production of glutathione, an antioxidant that is essential for liver detoxification. Adding these foods to your diet will help support your liver's natural ability to detoxify and protect itself from further damage. Foods like eggs, fatty fish, and walnuts are also excellent sources of nutrients that promote liver health. 6. Cut back on processed foods and sugars. Processed foods and refined sugars, like white bread, pastries, soda, and even bottled juices, are harmful to your liver. Fructose, in particular, can damage the liver in ways similar to alcohol. Eliminating or reducing your intake of these foods is a crucial step in supporting liver recovery and preventing further damage. 7. Consider bile salt supplements. Bile salt or ox bile supplements can aid in fat digestion and help prevent gallstones. These supplements are most effective when taken on an empty stomach in the morning, giving your liver a little extra support in processing fats and maintaining a healthy bile flow. Number 8. Try intermittent fasting. Intermittent fasting allows your liver to take a break and regenerate. It helps reduce liver fat, regulate insulin levels, fight inflammation, and kickstart the body's natural detox processes. This approach can be particularly beneficial for those looking to support their liver and overall health, helping the liver function more efficiently over time. 9. Engage in gentle exercise. As we age, maintaining physical activity becomes even more critical for liver health. Gentle exercises such as walking, swimming, or yoga not only improve overall circulation, but also help the liver function more efficiently by promoting the elimination of toxins through sweat and improving fat metabolism. Regular, low-impact exercise can assist in managing weight, which in turn reduces the strain on the liver, especially in preventing and managing conditions like fatty liver disease. Incorporating even short, daily exercise sessions can help support liver health and improve overall vitality. 10. Prioritize good sleep hygiene. Getting adequate rest is crucial for liver regeneration, as the liver works hard to detoxify and repair itself while we sleep. Poor sleep can increase stress on the liver, impair detoxification processes, and contribute to conditions like fatty liver disease. Creating a sleep routine that includes going to bed at a consistent time, reducing screen time before bed, and ensuring a quiet, cool sleep environment can significantly improve liver function. Aim for 7 to 9 hours of sleep each night to allow your liver to work efficiently during your body's natural detoxification phase. Incorporating simple yet powerful habits into your daily routine can have a profound impact on liver health, especially as we age. From supporting liver regeneration with natural remedies like turmeric coffee to staying hydrated and engaging in gentle exercise, these steps can make a significant difference in how your liver functions and how you feel overall. The liver, despite its resilience, needs proper care to continue supporting your body in the long run. By making mindful choices, you can ensure that your liver stays strong and healthy, allowing you to live a vibrant, active life. If you found this information helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss out on our latest health tips. And while you're here, we'd love to hear from you. What changes have you made to support your liver health? Or, if you have any questions, drop them in the comments below. Plus, take a guess. What health topic will we explore next? Leave your predictions in the comments, and let's see who gets it right.